We are in James chapter 3, continuing. We have finished the first section of chapter 3, which is on the tongue. And speaking concerning that, ships can be steered. They are enormous things, can be steered on the ocean. You have horses, which are large animals that can be controlled and maintained by bits and guided by bits in their mouths. But the tongue is untamable. The tongue is something that is always a problem. And as we made mention previously, that some people seem to have lost a filter or never developed a filter from their mind to their tongue. And that's not good. Some people hold it as a thing of pride and as a thing of, I always speak my mind. Well, you don't always need to speak your mind. You don't always need to. And some folks that, like a child hasn't developed that, and a child will speak their mind. And they'll say things that can be generally hurtful. They don't intend it to be that way. And of course you take it, well, that's just a child saying the obvious. But there has to be a filter from the mind to the tongue. And that he finishes this section of talking about springs of water. That you don't have, and also trees for that matter, that you don't have bitter water and fresh water coming from the same source, or also salt water and fresh water. Now, we just go to verse 12 in this, and in speaking about blessing our God and Father, and also cursing men, that it shouldn't be this way, that we bless and we do right for all. And he says, can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Thus no spring yields both salt water and fresh. But the tongue can. The tongue does. It shouldn't. But the tongue does do that. And he's trying to reel that in. It can switch back and forth. We can switch back and forth. And of course it can be swayed by emotion, by stress, by aggravation. There's all sorts of things that can bring this about, but the tongue is to be maintained. And now we come to this next section, which is on wisdom. Now here is the beauty that is here. He now speaks of wisdom, and he's going to be getting into that of sensual and worldly and demonic wisdom. And it is my opinion that he is addressing these things concerning the tongue, concerning that of self-seeking and that of envy, which he's going to be talking about, as the reason for verse 1 in chapter 3. My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. I don't think that's just an independent subject that is connected to nothing else. Just here's a little fact, and now we're going on to other facts. That this is obviously sandwiched. If it's independent, it's sandwiched between the discussions of faith and discussions of the tongue, and then wisdom. Okay, I personally believe the reason he is saying, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment, is that they have to correct themselves. They've got to correct an attitude. They have to, if he's making these discussions concerning faith, they have issues concerning their faith. If he has these discussions concerning the tongue, obviously, if he's talking about envy and self-seeking, that's obviously a problem that they have to address. And we'll get to that in a little bit more once we get into this next section, which is now. Now we go to verse 13. So we're in James chapter 3, verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct, let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. Now, he is tying this in to, or I should say, he's using the same logic that he used concerning faith. All right? If you have wisdom, show by your works that you have wisdom. Show by good conduct that your works are done in the meekness of wisdom. This is very similar to chapter 2, verse 18, and that would be, show me, and I'm changing it, show me your faith without your works. This would be, show me your wisdom without your works, and I'll show you my wisdom by my works. It's using the same logic. And obviously, people will agree that, yes, we must have the wisdom of God, and yes, the wisdom of God does produce good conduct. No one, or very few, only those who are just enemies of God would say that the wisdom of God leads to anything other than good conduct. But here is good conduct that is expected and demanded and is a outpouring. It is the effects of God's wisdom inside you, being used by you. And of course, the book of Proverbs is that of trying to show the value of wisdom. Not trying, it is showing the value of wisdom, and also giving us proverb after proverb and saying after saying of gaining wisdom. And it is wisdom that applies to every facet of our life. And of course, Jesus is going to expand on that and go deeper than the book of Proverbs gives. But who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. This is the same evidence called for concerning faith. Wisdom has a conduct. All right, someone who is just brutal and violent, and someone who has that, as from Romans chapter 1, has that debased mind. Someone who is just acting foolishly, acting like the scoffer, obviously does not have this wisdom and understanding, because we can judge by the conduct. And already he has stated in verse 12, but granted it's concerning the tongue, but a fig tree does not bear olives, and a grapevine does not bear figs, and you can't have from the same source both salt and fresh water. All right? That goes right into this discussion on wisdom, that someone can't be progressing in wisdom and in understanding and then just switch back and forth to just absolute fool. And also, this is more important, that wisdom isn't something that you can just switch on and off. It's not something that I'll play the fool until I decide I don't want to play the fool. Okay, you can't just flip a switch and now you've gone from fool to wise. You can't do that. A fool may think they can, but you can't. You'll get trapped further and further and have less and less value of wisdom, and seeing it as just being a joke, seeing it as being useless. And certainly someone who is self-seeking isn't going to be using the wisdom that's from above. And the fact that they are self-seeking shows by their conduct that they're not. But let's continue on. Here we have verse 14. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts. Do not boast and lie against the truth. Now let's discuss bitter envy for a moment. Now these two things, you have the envy and the self-seeking. These are works of worldly wisdom, and he's going to tell us this. But envy is resentment in what someone else has. That you resent that they have it, and you too would like to have that. And here is this bitter envy. Now, we've already discussed in this the idea of overflow of wickedness from the book of James. The overflow of wickedness does not mean that you can have some wickedness, just not an overflow of it. Okay? And when the Bible forbids an abundance of something or an overflow of something, doesn't mean that it does not mean that it permits a moderation of it. Like, okay, as long as your wickedness is in moderation, that's okay. It's not an overflow. The fact of the matter is, you don't know when it's overflowing. Okay, if we were to go by that, if we're going to go by that as a standard, you can't know when it's overflowing. And in fact, you probably would become so accustomed, it never overflows. You'd be so accustomed to sin, so accustomed to doing the things that you want to do, that you justify it every step of the way. And it never overflows. Now, so I can have some envy, but not bitter envy. Is that what James is teaching? No. Envy is wrong. Envy is one of those things that begins with the mind and takes you to places you really don't want to go. You don't want to go at all. Now, Cain, he killed his brother Abel. What did Abel do to Cain? He didn't do anything to Cain. As far as we know, he didn't do a thing to Cain. Why does he kill Abel? Well, from the information given, it's because Abel's sacrifices are accepted by God and Cain's are not. And after God reasons with Cain, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And Cain knew how to do well. He knew how to do well. He obviously, it's implied, he's been told, if you do well, it doesn't say if you figure out how to do well, or if you do well, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it. If you do well, will you not be accepted? The implication is Cain already knew. Abel obviously knew. And if Cain didn't know, he could learn from his brother, or others for that matter. But Cain did know. He kills. Why? I think it's because he resented his brother's acceptance. That God, he can't kill God, but he can kill his brother. And so he kills his brother because of it. Now, bitter envy. Any envy is wrong, but we have this modifier that shows where envy leads. And there's a lot of folks that they're led by envy. They are led by it, and and here's the thing: if we all lived in the desert, there's nothing around us but sand. All right, you possess sand, I possess sand. There's really nothing else that we could possess. Just this hypothetical. There will still be envy between people. It's not just a matter of one's material objects or material wealth or possessions. It's not just that. It's that I can envy you because of, and I can have an entire list that you are more attractive than I am, or that you are have more fun than I do, or that you're always in a good mood, and I'm not in a good mood. There's a million things that could bring about envy from one person to another, and it would have nothing to do with what they possess. It could be anything. It could be that you live closer to someone that I wish that I lived as close, or some place that I wished I lived there. You know, the grass is always greener on the other side of the hill or the fence or whatever it is. Okay, it's always greener over there. And the bad thing is to sit in your pasture and to envy the others on where the grass is supposedly greener. Okay, now here is this envy, but now there is also in this self-seeking. And of course, that is selfish ambitions is what this is. It's a selfishness. Self-seeking is a selfishness. And he is going to describe it in the next verse. This wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. And this is the second time he's mentioned demons in this book. There's demonic faith in 2:18. 2:19. Demonic faith in 2:19. Now demonic wisdom in 3:15. Okay, so here is there a faith that the demons have? Yes, they believe in God and tremble. Is there a wisdom that the demons have? Yes, there is. It's an earthly wisdom, a sensual wisdom, a demonic wisdom. It concerns envy and self-seeking and every evil thing. That's what it is. Now, this self-seeking, if we apply this now to verse 1, my brethren, from chapter 3, my brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. If we now do this concerning the tongue very briefly, that if you're going to be a teacher, you're going to have to rein yourself in. Not only do you need to know what doctrine is, but your behavior, the things that you say, not just in teaching, but when you're not teaching, the things that you say matter. But now also applying this of envy and self-seeking. Were there men who, in the first century, who wanted to be as great as Paul or greater than Paul in the church? And the answer is yeah. They wanted to add to his chains. They were they preaching the truth? Well, he believed that they were preaching the truth, but their behavior was reprehensible, or their motivation was reprehensible, because they were doing it in a self-seeking, for self-seeking. Okay, and to become a big name like Paul had become. But Paul wasn't seeking the name. He wasn't seeking notoriety. He was doing the work of God. That's what he was doing. Others, however, not anyone that I could name, but others, however, it was more of a trying to outdo someone else and to become more well known or as well known as someone else, and very much like with the Pharisees and others, that they wanted that greeting in the marketplace. They wanted the chief seats in the synagogue. They wanted people to recognize them and to admire them. All right, that's exactly what envy and self-seeking come to. That's what it comes to. And here is the very good reason why, not many of you need to become teachers in this. You've got to straighten some things out. Now, verse 15. This wisdom does not descend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. Demonic wisdom is, how do I get what I want? That's demonic wisdom. How do I get what I want? Who do I need to manipulate? Who do I need to run over? What do I need to do to get what I want? Because that is your self-seeking in this. And there are people, and you've known them, and I have known them, that well, let's just start this way. I have met highly intelligent people, and they seem to be very stable people. They don't seem to be selfish at all. They're very good at what they do, and they're basically good people. All right. I also, and this is what I'm getting at, and we've met them, highly intelligent people that they're using it as a cleverness. They're using it as a way to take advantage of people. The first example, they're not out to take advantage of people. They're out to do their job, whether it's a doctor or an engineer or whatever. All right? That they're using it to help people. But others, they can have the same kind of skill level, the same kind of intelligence, but they are just evil clever. And with some, you've seen them. With some, that it's not that when you reach this certain level of IQ, suddenly you're now using it for this purpose. It's that this person has problems they have got to correct, but they will use it to take advantage of people. They will use it to get ahead wherever they are, and it is this self-seeking. It's this clueiness, or well, that may not be the right word. It's this foxiness or cleverness of how to get to be on top of any given situation, how to be on top of that situation. And everybody else may get in trouble, but I won't. And if someone's going to get the blame, it's not going to be me. Yeah, I'm going to make sure it gets passed on to somebody else. But there is this cleverness that is part of this demonic wisdom, is what it is. And this is what they have to deal with. Because if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, so are they dealing with this? I think they are dealing with it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be addressing it. Or it's something that could definitely be a problem with them, and maybe they're getting very close to this. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your heart, when we didn't talk about this, do not boast and lie against the truth. Well, what would be the truth in that? That this is the wisdom that's from above. Because he's going to say in verse 15, as we read, it's not from above. And don't think that this is where Christ leads you and where the gospel leads you, because it doesn't, or that this is what the church is, because it's not. It's not a group of self-seekers. It's a group who are making living sacrifices. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're all fellow servants together. That's what we do. And we have to be willing to humble ourselves and have this meekness of wisdom from verse 13. This meekness of wisdom that is demanded. And meekness is the absolute opposite of self-seeking. It's the opposite to it. But now he says in verse 16, for where envy and self-seeking exists, confusion and every evil thing are there. So, is this what the church is supposed to be? Is this what Christians are supposed to be? Because if it is, then every evil thing is going to be there. Is that what Christ promotes? Well, no. But here, this would explain This would explain where wars and fights, why there are wars and fights from among them, which he's going to address. This would explain it. And he appears to be addressing a people where this is a problem. It's not that it's just on the verge of developing, but that this is becoming a problem. And they have to address this. But here is the earthly wisdom, the sensual wisdom, the demonic wisdom, and that is, how do I gain for me? How do I gain for me? And I'll just make mention for a moment that because we are talking about members of the church, here in James, he's addressing members of the church who have this issue. They have this issue. And I have known preachers that they thought of congregations. Now, some, not all, but some. More of a rarity for me, who thought of congregations like properties on a monopoly board. Okay, I don't want to be at Baltic Avenue. Okay, that's a pitiful place to be. I want to make my way to Boardwalk. That's where I want to be. That's the big place. That's the high pay. That's the notoriety. If you are the preacher at Boardwalk, then you've obtained it. You have made it. And everyone will be looking at you as someone. Now, it's more, for my experience, it's more the exception than the rule. But I've seen them. I have seen them of where it's just trying to climb this ladder that doesn't exist in the church. It doesn't exist. Now, if the ladder does exist, Christ didn't put it there, and it's not part of his church. We are servants, and we humbly serve wherever God puts us. You know, if we were to think of it as a monopoly board, if it's Baltic Avenue, it's Baltic Avenue. If it's Boardwalk, it's Boardwalk. If it's wherever on the monopoly board, that's where it is. You do your job, and you do it in meekness, and you do it not self-seeking. That's where you've been put. In here, we're coming to a different discussion altogether, but we can see where there are places where Paul could preach, and there are places where he couldn't, and it would be a mistake for him to stay there. How long did he get to preach in Damascus? He's just beginning. How long did he get to preach? Not very long, and he had to get out of there. And I doubt that it would have changed much over the years. How effective would he have been in Jerusalem? That would seem to be, in that day, the boardwalk of the day. That would be, but he couldn't. He couldn't stay there for very long before there's trouble. And toward the end of Acts, it becomes big trouble of where you have a crowd that would have killed him. All right, that's going to be a very tough place for him to preach. Peter can preach there and preach there for years, but Paul can't. Okay, and understanding that with Christians, and it doesn't matter with if we're talking about preachers, but just members of the church serving where you are and serving humbly. Serving with meekness where you are. And that we're not each trying to outdo the other, each envying each other or wanting to be envied, as can be seen from Corinth as described in 1 Corinthians. It seems as though some of those people were doing one of two things, either envying somebody else or wanting to be envied. That, I've got the thing and you don't. I've got the power of, the spiritual gift of, and you don't. Okay. And that makes me better than you. Okay. Envy me. Now, Every evil exists there, and confusion exists there, where you have the envy and the self-seeking. They cannot, if we think of, going back to 1 Corinthians, in the discussion there of members of the church as parts of the body. Each has a different function. The eye has an important function, but so does the ear. So does the pinky. Each plays an important role, and I dare say you don't want to be rid of any parts of your body. I dare say. As my earlobes aren't terribly important, but I don't want them cut away. Okay? I don't. But every part plays a part. There's something necessary about them. Something necessary about them. And now, suppose you've got the respiratory system against the respiratory system against the cardiovascular system. Okay, against your neurological system, against your digestive system, against all these other systems. Suppose all of your systems were at odds with each other. You got a problem. And I dare say you would not survive for very long. The doctors wouldn't know what to do, that all of your organs are warring against each other. All of your organs are against each other. You are not a united body, but very much a warring body. Where does that get you? It would be death. Now, take that into a congregation. It would be the death of that congregation, which is precisely what was happening with Corinth. That's precisely what was happening there. It was fracturing up, and what are you going to get? You're going to get confusion in every evil thing, which is precisely what was happening. Confusion and every evil thing. They're taking each other to court. There's protection of sin, making a safe haven for sin. There's just one thing after another with them. One thing after another. Now, James is addressing this problem. Now, we see what earthly, sensual, demonic wisdom is like. Now he's going to describe for us heavenly wisdom. But the wisdom, verse 17, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Okay, now here is something that truly is pure. It truly is. It shows no partiality. Now, he's already discussed showing partiality, and that we're not to do that. We're not to show partiality at all. That goes back to chapter 2. But there's also no hypocrisy about it. That you are what you are, and what you present yourself to be. That's heavenly wisdom, or the wisdom that is from above, is not one that preaches one thing but winks at you doing another thing, the absolute opposite. But it is the teaching the one thing, and you're committing yourself to the one thing. Teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. Okay, that I have commanded you. And that would include teaching and observing all things that I have commanded you. And teaching it and observe it. You teach it and observe it, and others are to teach and observe it. There's no hypocrisy in this. And here, with this wisdom, how does heavenly wisdom, the wisdom that is from above, how does that cause divisions? How does it cause chaos and every evil thing? It doesn't. It creates unity. Let's read it again. First, it's pure. Then it's peaceable. It does not divide up. It's not seeking its own in this. It's gentle, willing to yield. What does that mean? Yield to a change in, someone wants to change the doctrine of Christ? Say, okay, yeah, that's fine. Willing to yield. Someone is going to bring in some new doctrine that is homegrown, and for the sake of having unity with this brother who's brought it in, that we yield to that. That's not the meaning of it. That's not the meaning of this. Because doctrine is set by Christ. That's one thing that Christ is unyielding toward it, and we are to be unyielding toward that. It's Christ's way always. It's my way never. Christ's way always, my way never. And this willing to yield means that my opinion counts for nothing. It's just an opinion. That my ideas account for nothing. That there is something greater than my ideas and my opinions, and my life even. There is something greater than any of this, and it is the doctrine of Christ, the church, and its work. Okay, those things are far greater than anything of mine. Far greater. And here, this willing to yield is that of, with some people, it's my way or the highway. And that's not this willing to yield. Willing to yield means that I can gladly and willingly say, okay, your idea, let's go with that. If you think that's going to work, let's go with that. Or that you have others that they have an idea that they believe it's better than my idea. Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's go with that. As long as it's under the will of Christ, and it's just a thing of expediency. That's under the will of Christ. We can try it. We can do it, and see what happens. Willing to yield is where you're not lording it over. Someone who's lording it over, and yeah, you don't have to be an elder to be in that position. Someone can lord it over and not be an elder at all. But you're not someone who's got to have their way all the time. And sometimes that can just happen. Now, full of mercy and good fruits. Now, that's very interesting, because we're coming back to this idea of show me your faith without your works. All right, show me your wisdom and your good conduct without conduct. Show me. Show me the wisdom that you have by doing nothing. All right, show me the wisdom that you have, and yeah, you're going to be doing something, and that wisdom can be judged by the things that you do, by the ideas that you espouse, by the doctrine that you espouse, by your language, that's the tongue, by whether there's envy and self-seeking, if there's this selfishness involved, there's all of this comes down to what fruit you are actually producing. It all comes down to that. And here is this mercy and good fruits, once again, without partiality and without hypocrisy. We don't live the double lives. We don't do that. We present ourselves by what we are. Will there be hypocrites in the church? Of course. Just like there will be adulterers in the church. Just like there will be, name the sin in the church. Of course there will be. Some who are trying, and they're getting out of that, or have gotten out of that. But I'm talking about hypocrites who they're not getting out of that, and they don't want to get out of that. They're presenting one side to the public, or at least to fellow Christians, and another side separate from them. And it's just absolute hypocrisy. Condemning, like with Romans chapter 2, who are you, O man, to judge another? The things you judge these others, you're doing the same thing. You're doing the same thing. That's hypocrisy. Then the wisdom from above isn't that at all. And if we were going to be discussing morality and ethics, one of the things concerning a law of ethics is the law of ethics can't have hypocrisy in it, and the law of ethics has to be pure. And it comes down to the law of ethics has to be from someone, not only are they good, but it has to come from someone above all of humanity. It can't just be one of us who's developed this law of ethics. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. It has to be someone who's not only above us, but will judge us, and that describes God in every way. Good, perfect, has no hypocrisy. And above humanity, and will judge humanity. And if you have an ethic, or if you have a morality that isn't like that, then you've got the wrong sense of morality. You've got the wrong sense entirely. Thinking that certain things are right. No, yeah, the occasional lie is okay too. That's hypocrisy. Or the occasional sin is okay because, just whatever the justification is. Well, that is hypocrisy. That is far from being pure. That has now been adulterated. It's been poisoned by something. Now let's go to verse 18, and we will finish this chapter, and we will be finished for today. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. There it is. This is not what they've been doing, evidently. But the fruit of righteousness is not sown by bitter envy. It's not sown by, and the fruit of righteousness would be this teaching that obviously they want to be. But this fruit of righteousness, it's not sown with the self-seeking. It's not sown with the envy. It's not sown with worldly wisdom, but it's sown in peace by those who make peace. There's your peacemakers. It's by those who make peace. That's who does it on this earth today. That's who does it. That's who plants this fruit of righteousness. The ones that it is sown in peace, it brings peace, is what it does. And it's sown by those who are, in fact, they've committed it for themselves. They committed themselves to it, of the peace of righteousness, that good fruit, that is good conduct, that is from the wisdom that is from above. All right, we will finish up now and appreciate everyone being with us. We will begin chapter 4 on our next lesson. Thank you, everybody.